The broadcast is now starting.
Hello everyone, happy Thursday, glad to see you. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to the next episode of the PixelMill webinar series and today's offering of Understanding the Fundamentals of Business Applications. Boom, it's going to be such a good session today. I'm so excited about this one. If I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, my name is Michael Wells. I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at PixelMill. I host these webinars once a month, so you'll always see my beautiful bald head here leading the charge. We've got a great session today. I'm really excited to introduce our speaker in just a little bit. Just want to run through a couple of quick things with you guys. The usual webinar stuff. If you haven't been here before, first of all, welcome, happy to have you. If you have been here before, thank you so much for coming back. We really appreciate it. If you guys happen to have any questions or comments that come up during the session today, there is a questions and chat tab. Throw that stuff up there. I'll be keeping track of it. I'll try to sneak in those questions as best as possible. If we don't get to them right in the moment, we do try to save a little time at the end of the session for a Q&A. So don't worry, we will get to your questions at some point today. Quick little bit about PixelMill. If you've never joined us for one of these before, we've been around for about 20 years in the enterprise UI, UX, research, design, and development game. We specialize in building customized communication and collaboration solutions and kind of that stuff utilizing Office 365, SharePoint, Teams, and Azure. We like to consider ourselves technologists and researchers and artists kind of working together to create that functional and beautiful tool set to help make your team more effective communicators and collaborators. There you go. That's your 30-second pitch on PixelMill. Thanks for joining me here. All right, I'll stop blathering on because I could go on for hours. Our speaker today is one heck of a guy, and it probably has created my favorite shirt of all time. If you've ever seen the SharePoint shirts where it's a picture of Share and a hand pointing, this guy, it was all his idea. He is the leader of Collab Talk. He's a Microsoft MVP and regional director. Everyone give it up for Mr. Christian Buckley. Take it away, sir.
Oh, wait, I didn't have my audio clip ready. Hang on. I think I do actually have my, wait, if you can hear it. Thank you.
Hey, there
Thank
it
you.
is. Excellent.
Applause.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone,
So-
we also have Mr. Eric Overfield on the call, just kind of auditing. He might jump in every now and then, but he's here to say hello.
Wait,
Yes, hey all. Thank you, Christian, for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to be here. Well, it's an interesting topic. There's a lot going on in this space, and this is fundamentals. It's an overview presentation of what the business apps are, and hopefully I can clear up some any confusion you have around some of the messaging that's out there. And so we'll just kind of jump into it. Just very quickly, my background, I've been in the space. Those who don't know me, I've been in the Microsoft ecosystem formally since 2006. I joined Microsoft. I was there for 3.5 years, and then I was in the independent software vendor world, working with SharePoint and Office 365, and all of the other related technology. I think we're now Office Apps and Services MVPs, and so that includes much more than just a single application like SharePoint or Yammer or Microsoft Teams or any of those things. They're all kind of in that same bucket of Office Apps and Services. As are these business apps. This falls within that realm as well. Although, again, this is part of the clarification for some of the messaging. Very quickly, these topics, some of them jump over into the development world, and there are different focuses and experts that are out there. So I'll talk a little bit about the core applications, and we'll go from there. I'm also a Microsoft Regional Director, as is Eric, and the best way to describe this is RDs provide expertise and guidance to Microsoft leadership. And so there are interesting, fascinating discussions, many of which I am woefully underqualified to jump in on. Occasionally I speak up on some of these topics when it comes over into my realm of marketing systems and collaboration and social technologies. But there are, Eric, there's something like 177, I think, of us globally. Something
in that, yeah.
Something like that.
A little less than 180, I think.
Right, but you can go take a look at mvp.microsoft.com, of course, to find out about MVPs, and rd.microsoft.com to find out about the RDs. Well, let's jump into this. Hopefully this I won't take up the whole hour, but it's always my goal to go 45 minutes, and it never works out.
What screen are we looking at? There we go. Finally,
yes. Now I'm switching over. So it's best to start with the Microsoft 365 very quickly and what that means, because it's an important part of the messaging of the business apps. So when Microsoft announced, hey, Microsoft 365, and this was what, 3.5 years ago, I think, 2.5, 3.5, anyway, when it was initially looked at, hey, here's another product SKU where they're just taking these existing pieces, Office 365 and and Windows 10 and all of the mobile solutions, the security, kind of the combined platform. But it is more than that. It wasn't just a SKU, taking the existing pieces, putting together and repackaging and selling that out. There's the enterprise and smaller business solutions. There are the SKUs that are tied to that. But it was also a change in direction, an alignment of the various solutions towards this one unified platform or approach to providing tools and solutions to the market. And there's this idea that we have some of our tools that are local, they're on-prem or on our desktop, and we have data around each of these systems. We're using things in Azure, we're using these third-party systems, we have file shares, we have all of this data, all these tools that access and create this data in different locations. We want to be able to leverage those things in a much more fluid, easier way. So you had the conversations around the Microsoft Graph and being able to, for every application, every tool, every solution that Microsoft develops, that it would make this data available, that it would write that to the Microsoft Graph so that it could then be accessed as this universal API. And so the Microsoft 365 is a continuation of that vision of, look, this is it's a system, it's a platform, it's flexible and dynamic based on the solutions that you need. And where we're going with business applications is that it also needs to be something that end users and power users and developers can go in and flexibly access and build and add on to and customize and personalize. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So Microsoft 365, and you see some of the messaging. I'm going to skip by some of these slides very quickly. And by the way, you'll recognize, if you can see down my Twitter handle at the bottom, and I've kind of split up those slides that I've kind of created. Look, it's all Microsoft messaging and my input on that. But my slides, I've got my name on it. Those that are at Microsoft are the ones where I've taken from these shared slide decks that Microsoft has, that I've kind of put different slides together here. But you have Microsoft 365 talks about that personal productivity. What do I need? That's my local applications, whether they're on my desktop or the cloud, but it's about me going in using Word, using PowerPoint, using applications to better collaborate with my team members. Then you have that modern teamwork, which is all of us, the group of us working together. You also have that streamlined admin capability. Look, if you are doing any kind of admin work across any of the workloads or across Office 365, you know that there's plenty of room for growth for Microsoft to simplify and bring these things together. It is moving very quickly, though. We are seeing, and I think part of this unified view of this Microsoft 365 view of the world is helping accelerate the streamlining of this centralized admin experience. And then, of course, when you have this centralized experience, you can then start to look at security and compliance from that standpoint, as well as I want to be able to do security across different workloads. This team in this location, they're using SharePoint and Yammer and of course Outlook and the desktop tools. This other team they're heavy on Power BI and more of the analytical tools and developer tools. But I want to be able to set policies company-wide based on their different roles, but things to make sure that we as a company are compliant. So Microsoft is getting better at providing those kinds of capabilities. So here's some of the Microsoft messaging around this. Why it's the Microsoft 365 one solution designed for your business. Of course, Microsoft it's where they've been a leader for so long, is on the business side of things. It's the practical application from the business perspective. Achieve more anywhere your people are, security's always there, and simplified for business. And then, kind of the benefits, again, the generic slide here, unlocks creativity, it's about teamwork, integrated, secure. Now this is what Microsoft is getting better at the messaging. The last two slides were a little bit older. Here's one of the newer ones where they're really kind of focusing on the business app story. So they're looking at how they can, these collaboration scenarios. It's about, the teamwork. Microsoft Teams is a great example. You're probably familiar with the inner loop, outer loop messaging where, Outlook is like one-to-many and can be inner loop or outer loop. It could be, blast it out to, one person or send it out to, 1,000 people. But when you're working on a project and you've got, okay, this is my team of 4 or 5 people, and Microsoft Teams is that great inner loop focused on just those that need to be involved with that. But if I want to reach out to 10,000 employees and get feedback, their thoughts on where the company moves next, I might put it out in that outer loop of like Yammer, our internal Yammer group. But that's, different solutions for collaboration. Then you have employee engagement empowerment. So this is the ability just to go and to engage with at the right level, at the right place. And again, I love the inner loop, outer loop messaging, but it's, you as an individual have the ability to go in and use the solution that fits the business need that you have. So it's not, one way to look at this is in the early days of SharePoint, and with like a lot of other technologies, so not to beat up on SharePoint, but a company would go in and say, we are going to deploy SharePoint and everyone must use SharePoint for these things. And some things SharePoint is really good at. It is a strong document collaboration intranet solution. It has, you can attach work process, workflows, things into that, and it can be a great functional solution. And other times it's overkill and it's boxy. It's not a fluid solution for things that need to be dynamic and quick. Can be. And so what happens is that people would go and ignore the directive to use SharePoint for everything. And go and find faster, better, more robust capabilities on third-party solutions that were not supported. That might be non-compliant, that, who knows where the data is, who knows if there's a security risk with having sensitive information out on these systems. And so recognizing that you had this chaotic IT environment, Microsoft says, well, we need to be able to support people in the ways that they are working. And so that's where the third category here of business transformation really comes into play, and this idea of the business apps. So if you, going back to my earlier statement, data that sits in different repositories, different tools, different requirements for visibility into that data, into those tools, different security requirements that could change by project, not just by team. And over time that may evolve as business needs change, as the culture of collaboration evolves and people want more out of their solution. And this idea that I can go and transform these business capabilities and build out personalized, targeted solutions based on the needs of that project, of that team, of that role within the organization, to do big things and little very specific things. And another big benefit of these solutions is that me as an end user, this is part of that empowerment as well, is that if I find myself constantly going in, pulling down reports, this goes old school into my data warehousing days, where back when I was in IT in the mid-90s, we'd have our internal users, the product managers, the marketing organizations that would come to us and say, we need this data, it's just not giving us what we need. And we would go and build these data farms and these subsets of these data, give them massive amounts of data where we're constantly adding and removing data to make it more relevant so that it was quicker and easier for them to get what they needed. But there was a lot that had to happen on the back end, and they had to that, and we owned these data systems and had to be very careful with the usage of them. They had to come through us to get to IT to get their requests met, and it took a long time. Very frustrating. So you started to see applications like business objects and SaaS and other things where power users were able to go do much more, but it was still, it required a lot of training, a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise to be able to go in there. Sometimes they had to know Unix to be able to go in the back end to get exactly the result that they wanted out of that report from that data. And so now you have this ability end users to go in with drag and drop within the browser or on the desktop to very quickly create these logical applications and do very powerful and personalized things to speed up their work. And they don't have to go bother somebody in IT to do, unless they want to then go and share, hey, I built this thing and I'd love for more of the organization to go and do it. Then there's a few more hoops to jump through, depending on what that is. So what this looks like, you may have seen a version of this. This is kind of the landscape of the solutions that are out there. So there's the suite of business applications. So you have PowerApps and Flow and Power BI, the things that are known. Of course, out of the Office 365 side of that, you also have the familiar applications, SharePoint, Yammer, the Outlook, Teams, OneDrive, all those other things that are in there. So all of those things that you want to be able to work with, pull data, interact with on the front end, as well as pull data from those things. So you have these various connectors and gateways. There's rules around who can access certain things and the type of data that's used, and it needs to be monitored to make sure that we're compliant, kind of all of those things. But then there's this common data service, but you have this extensibility. So people have the ability to go in and tap into that in a controlled, managed way. So what are the business apps specifically? And I kind of liked this. I was trying to find the right image to convey this because a business app can be different based on the individual, the user, the set of users, the project, the organization. But it's a solution created to enhance existing processes and services or adapt to emerging operational platforms. So you think about this, one, it can be created with low or no code, and that's critical. So again, any end user should be able to, with some moderate training, be able to get up to speed very quickly on some of these things. It's largely end user driven, so it doesn't need that formal IT request unless you're looking at taking something. I built this Power App and it had these customized flows, and I think that the entire company, outside of my team of 50, I think all 1,000, 10,000 employees should have access to this. Slightly different issue there, and there's I'm not going to get into the detail of what's required there to propagate that, but just realize that these are designed for that smaller subset of users. They can be created quickly and easily. They can be integrated with other systems, and I'll talk about that shortly. But it's really about empowering users to be able to grab data where they need it across these different systems and applications. So and you'll see some more of this messaging out there, but what does it enable you to do? Data-driven decisions, so that you're not going out there and guessing about or pulling down a report. You can automate a lot of that, so that, I spent many years of my life building and providing dashboards and reports for organizations that I worked with, even as a marketing guy now and providing fractional CMO services for all my clients. All of them want to be able to, I want to be able to see in real time this data coming in and populating and telling me how to make my next decision, because management, the key to management, successful management, is taking the data, the limited data that you have, and making decisions. So the more data, the more rapidly, the more timely you can get to that data to make decisions, the better decisions, in theory, will be made. But you want that data-driven decisions, that intelligent workplace. So that's like data coming in, I'm able to make a decision. The intelligent workplace is the automation. Is saying that, why am I spending my time doing all of these repeated tasks where I should be able to, if this comes in, this request, it should automatically trigger the creation of this form, notify these people. Why do I have to manually send out emails to do this? The system should be able to do this. And so you can actually create based on email coming into your system and requests that are standardized. Maybe you have a template, a form for a project request or event request or whatever it is. We'll go into a couple examples here. But that it automatically takes those next steps and you be notified of those things and even monitor number of requests coming in, where they're coming from, and speaking back to the first point, data-driven decisions. What's great about that is like looking at all these requests coming in, I might look at it over time and say, you know, in Q1, 75% of the requests were coming from this organization. And why are they quadruple the number of requests of any other organization within the company? Do we need to do more training there? Do we need to create more specific solutions for their requests? Is just the nature of their business slightly different that we need to do something different for them? So again, you can make better decisions having looked at that data and that automation. And then again, having that enterprise grade security controls. So being able to go in and say, all right, over these systems, we need to make sure that we're compliant. And I would say this about secure and compliant. There's a lot of things that you can do. People are less apt to ask, should we do these things? So I've worked with a few companies and I've had some clients. I worked with a company a few years back where I was hired to help them become compliant with their financial systems. That was the number one reason why I was brought in as a consultant. I was there for a year. And so it was to help them develop the processes as well as the automations. And then to enforce those because the company was hitting penalties. It was into the tens of thousands and could be very rapidly. It moved into the hundreds of thousands of dollars a month just in penalties because of the number of transactions that they managed. And so I helped them to put in place these compliant processes and automations to remove the manual errors that were happening in the system. And so by having that global view, they're able to then go in and look at, all right, what's a problem today? Well, we've solved that problem. Yeah, but now what it highlights is other areas where we can also go in and improve. All right, and here's another one. This is actually something when the announcements came out about the business applications, and you probably saw some of it. Chris McNulty with Microsoft talked a lot about this space, and I'll get to the white paper that's out there if you've not yet downloaded a copy of that. But really focused on the three core aspects of these business application creations. So gathering of data, automating, and then creating the interface, the activity. What does that look like? And so you have both the developer view of the world, and then you have that power user view of the world. So we're really focusing on the power user side of things. So I'm not going to get into the common data service, logic apps, or I'm not going to touch Xamarin. I'm not a Xamarin guy. But these are the things that are core to the discussion around business apps. Now, this is not to be confused with the Microsoft pre-built applications. Probably remember when these things came out, these small business solutions. Here's some of them, not all of them. I'm not sure if they are beyond US, UK, and Canada right now, what's happening with those. Occasionally you'll see some information about them. You go and search on business applications or Microsoft business apps, and half of the content out there will be about the power user, Microsoft 365 perspective, what we're talking about today. The other half of the content is about these pre-built, largely small business solutions, applications that Microsoft went and built. Not to take anything away, it's just, this is part of the clarification, the messaging. Two things that you're referring to as business apps might be confusing to some people. So that's not what we're talking about, these packaged solutions. And just to clarify again, we're also not talking about the Microsoft Power Platform, although this is just the dev side of what we're talking about today. The messaging is slightly different. This messaging is targeted towards the developer crowd, It also includes in the messaging, dynamics and a lot of other things. And so if you go and find content that's built really around the Power Platform, you'll put your dev hat on. It's going to be a little more. It's going to be different than more of the Office 365 side of the business apps. So what we're talking about here is what is outlined in the white paper. So transforming business processes with Microsoft 365. So this came out in February, the first week in February, and there's the shortened URL. Of course, you'll be able to get the slides. You'll get the link again. You'll get multiple reminders, and I'll show the URL again at the end here. But definitely go and take a look. So most of what I'm going to be talking about, and I'll share today, some of the examples that are within this white paper, so you can get the detail there. And download the paper, if nothing else, for the resources on the last couple pages. Some fantastic, so training resources, the case studies, the templates. For the white paper, there were 3 different templates or case studies that were done, and actually they built working code, so you can go and download all of those pieces, modify it, use them, or just learn how to build them based on those templates. And so that's kind of the purpose. It's beyond just reading, hey, that's nice, I see the value there, but it's actually a way for you to go start building and to learn that way, get your hands dirty. So at a high level, the tools used that are within these business apps, so Microsoft Forms, PowerApps and Flow, Power BI, and I just did a faux pas there. Let's see how I put Power, no space with BI. I'm chastised all the time for doing that because I usually write it as a hashtag. But it's supposed to be separated there. And then, of course, SharePoint lists, the modern lists. I'm going to show you a couple things very quickly here. Don't have a ton of time. I'm not going to get into detail, but if you've not played with this yet, one easy way to start to get to know these things, go take a look at Microsoft Forms. Of course, there was the Pro, the preview of the Pro version that's out there now. So Forms enables users to gather information, both internal and external. You can create surveys, quizzes, polls. I use these on a regular basis. In fact, I'll show you. Let me jump over to this. So this is actually, and hopefully everybody can see that, my view of so some of the forms that I have out there. Of course, I've got things under my personal profile. I've got a number of forms under my company as well. But here's one that I have out there. Like I do these monthly webinars with my good friend Tom Duff around Office 365 and Microsoft Office productivity. And we just had this survey went out for our latest session. So I went and built this quick form that what we do is unique in that webinar. If you've not seen this, is that we do 5 rounds. So we share 10 tips, but we don't know what the other person's going to present. So he might do like a PowerPoint tip, and I might do, my Excel. He might do a SharePoint. I might do a Microsoft Teams. And then what we ask the audience and people that watch this live stream or watch the video afterwards to go vote on which they thought were of those 2, not who their favorite presenter was, because we try to trash talk each other a little bit, all out of love. But of those 2, and it's going to be an apples to oranges comparison in most cases. We've never had where both of us do the same product for the same round. But which one do you think would provide more productivity to you or your team? And so what's great about this, so I got this link here. I've got a blog post with links to the video, is that you can then go right in there and see in real time, look at the live responses and look at the data. And there's actually ways of sharing this out, looking at in Excel. And what this shows is that right now, I don't think Tom's on, so I can say this, is that I'm beating him in 4 out of the 5. So that's a good thing. I'm happy with that. Going back to the front page, there's a sample that's in here when you are new to Microsoft Forms. Just let me go. There's some templates. There's some examples that are up there. One of them is this customer satisfaction survey. And so this just gives you an idea of some of the different styles, different ways that, the star versus the radio button, the be able to rate things on a, not at all likely to very likely. have short or long answers and collect all this information. What's new with what's in preview with the next version of it is you actually have the ability to go in there and so you can send that survey out. Of course, when you send a survey email, you can create flows around this. You can embed it. So there's a lot that you can go and do. Of course, create an application where, depending on how people respond, you now have branching so that you can have much more complex forms or questionnaires based on how somebody answers question number 1. They might not see questions 2 and 3, but they jump right to 4, 5, and 6. And so there's think about that, building into an application that you send out to your employees. If you're doing, for example, an employee satisfaction survey and an annual or biannual survey internally, just to get a gauge of how happy people are in the workplace and where you can improve. And so this is based on the responses. You can have a very complex survey put in place and get some very robust data out of this tool. So again, there's the QR code. Yes, we're still using QR codes. That's right. I guess that's just until we have the chips that are embedded within our wrists or the iris scans. But it's good to have those things. All right, let me jump back over. All right, so that was forms. So some of the things, again, this is another Microsoft slide: surveys, quizzes, polls, just general information gathering around that. A lot of great ways that you can incorporate this and embed that in, whether you're using, SharePoint or Teams or Yammer, or send it via email, and all these different ways to share that information out and to have conversations to gather information with the organization, the community that you're trying to work with. So the next one is kind of a big one, is the PowerApps. And I'm not going to go into demo. I'm going to share a couple screens because it gets a little more involved here. And it gets into that world of citizen developers. So citizen developers are people who create apps and enhance or modify those apps and really own a lot of those key business processes. So PowerApps allows users to go and build apps that work on the desktop, in the browser, in a mobile, have that consistent user experience across those things. And it is a rather, you don't have to be a hardcore developer. There is more training that's involved, but it is a largely simple and powerful way to go and point and click, to drag and drop and create these applications, small applications. You can start a course with all these things with a blank canvas, or you go pull down from a vast library of examples, and people will also publish and share their samples, their examples. Go and modify it. It's a great way to learn how to do these more technical things too, is how did somebody else build it? What are those examples? Go and modify it to fit your needs. And so, of course, it allows you to connect with, I don't know the total number of connectors, data sources. There's over 200. I don't know, Eric, if you're still on, do you know how many connections that it has?
No, it's a bunch though.
Yeah, it might even be double that. That might be old data there, but there's just a ton out there, and it's a moving target every month. They're trying to expand that.
Yeah, and a lot of them are already included in most of the standard e-licenses, which I think is pretty cool. So there are the premium connectors that cost more, where you need a P1, P2 license per user, but there's still a lot you can do with your general O365 licenses.
Exactly. And I guess I should have said this caveat at the beginning of all these things, is like anything, I'm not going into like what licensing, what do you have to have. I'm just talking about the vision of what's out there and the messaging around that. You definitely want to go and take a look at, like anything in the Microsoft world, is what I show on my screen. Make sure that you have the appropriate licenses to be able to use those different tools and solutions. But this is the kind of stuff, if you generally have an E license, you're going to get access to most of what I'm showing you, except, as Eric points out, more advanced menus or recipes, I guess, is I'll share some that language here in a second here. But some examples. So it actually comes with PowerApps, has this development workspace to go and kind of build out that experience, connect it to the data sources, build out the UI so that you can have these, in-browser, experiences, have these things built out very quickly and easily. So part of some of the advantages of Power Apps, it's a couple Microsoft slides here, because it's part of the cloud, the deployment approach, that they're constantly adding to that. So as I said, these, whether 200 or 400, however many connectors that are out there, if you're working with another popular tool or system that you want to be able to leverage data from, pretty confident that Power Apps can do it today. Or if not, contact the product team and say, hey, it's essential for us to be able to adopt this tool. We need to be able to connect with these third-party systems. And is it on your roadmap? Are you aware of it? And I think if you go out and make requests out there, if you go out to like the Microsoft Tech community and do a search on that third-party tool or system, it's likely on the roadmap or being discussed, or you can or make a request. So yeah, this is an old screen, the old slide here, 100+ connectors. Yeah, it's much larger. So some of the things that you can do with SharePoint specifically, so you have the SharePoint data via the connector, the embedded forms, web part, Power Apps, apps from a SharePoint list, and then also build those things out in the SharePoint modern pages. So there's a lot that you can do. Of course, the SharePoint team was on top of, in fact, the first time we heard about Power Apps, it was actually discussed with MVPs in the SharePoint content at the MVP Summit, the annual summit where MVPs gather at Microsoft headquarters. So that was 3 years ago, I think, when they showed us, and it was impressive when it was, they showed out of the box and where they're going. Yeah, there's a lot that's happening there if you are a SharePoint organization and want to understand how you can better incorporate Power Apps. Definitely go take a look there. Flow. Let me show you around Flow. Jump over to the other screen again. So again, here's the Flow screen, the experience in there. There's a lot of templates and tools that are out there. Now, I'm newer to Flow than I am to, I've been a long time IFTTT, Zapier. I don't have my login there, but where I would go and do automations, personal automations using this, where when Microsoft Flow was announced, and Microsoft is the solution, where I would say things like, every time I have my iPhone and I take a picture, I don't want to have to go and think about syncing iCloud with my desktop. I want every photo that I take to automatically, when I'm back, on Wi-Fi, not using cellular data, but to sync my photos with OneNote. So I can go in and specifically grab them. So I have that automation that I did using IFTTT, if this, then that. So I created that automation because at the time, Flow didn't have it. And I've had this in place for a couple of years. Is that right? Yeah, a couple of years now. Time goes by so quick. So this is something where you could go in there and do these kinds of personal automations or team automations. So sending yourself a reminder, but this is that level of automation where you can say, well, if this person sends me an email on this topic, then notify 2 other people, or create a task in Planner in Office 365, or create a card within this channel within Microsoft Teams. If somebody mentions me on Twitter, I want to be able to see it within the marketing channel within this Microsoft team, or I want it to generate an email notification or a reminder so I can go take a look at it and respond. These are things that you can go and do and to, again, streamline repetitive tasks within your personal life. And like everything else you're doing as a team, you can also start thinking about more and more complex scenarios where you can have flows that initiate other flows depending on how that transaction, how that happens. You can have multiple flows that are embedded or are part of a Power App solution. So depending on how people interact with that tool that you've created, can kick off and automate processes. I spent a good portion of my first third of my career, almost 30 years, in the project management world. One of my first intranet experiences was building out and automating, as much as you could automate in 1995, 1996, the project management methodology in the process. I wanted it to be self-serve so that somebody could go in and say, I have a new request, click on this, this is what's required, here's the forms, here's the templates, here's where I am in the process. But it was images clicking to file shares, and it wasn't really automated. There was still a lot of manual behind the scenes. All of our dashboards of how many requests have come in and where these requests were in the process. It was me doing all of that. In fact, that was Access back in '96. So that was a lot of fun to maintain all of that, so that our management team had this nice little dashboard of what activity was happening with our project management organization. But now you can automate so much of this, and so that you can be more hands-off and truly have this near real time. Not everything works in real time exactly, but you can have these process that updates these dashboards so that you're not spending your life chasing people on the steps of where they are within that process. So that is flow. That's that capability. So you go in and build a flow, modify any of these templates, and to customize it based on your need. Send those notifications. Every time, hey, here's just a simple one. Send myself a reminder in 10 minutes. And I could say that, send myself a reminder in 10 minutes and then kick off another flow and then follow up with this other action and connect it to these other tools and systems. All right, let me jump back into that. All right, this one I'm kind of excited. The best way to showcase what Power BI can do, you're collecting the data, and I mean, so much about Power BI, a little more knowledge that needs to be in place to be able to set it up and kind of get the true value out of what's possible there. But Microsoft, between Excel and Power BI, is really working on democratizing data analysis and letting end users and power users do so much incredible capabilities through this. And let me show you an example of this. So going back into this view. So this is, so I run these these monthly tweet jams under the hashtag CollabTalk, my company, on different topics. Not doing one this month, going to do one most likely around takeaways from the SharePoint conference next month in May. So I partner with Tygraph, that they go and do all the data capture. So they're looking at the Twitter data as it's coming in, the conversations. It's tweet jam. If you're not familiar with the model, it's an idea where the way that I run this is so I've got a panel of experts that participate, but it's on Twitter. It's open. Anyone can participate in this conversation. We always discuss 7 questions over the course of 1 hour. And every response should have, they don't always, they need to have, the hashtag of CollabTalk and then the question number. So if we're talking about question number 3, you have your response in Twitter, you put the hashtag of CollabTalk, and there's a few things that they go and capture. They capture all of that data. This is Tygraph, the partner that comes in and does this. They dump it into Power BI, and they've built this beautiful dashboard. So I can look at, of course, there's some cleanup that happens on the back end. A lot of the cleanup is automated, but they're able to go in there and look at number of tweets, the number of impressions. So based on, the reach of the people that participated had a reach of 177,000 Twitter profiles, and the number of then views, the times that each of those tweets and showed up across the network in that 1 hour, we had over 2 million impressions in that 1 hour. If you're not a marketing person and don't know if that's a big number or not, there are week-long conferences that don't have that number, 2 million impressions. So that's an excellent number. So going in, it's capturing this. Of course, it's looking at it by question. It's looking at the cumulative count there. It's giving us like who's tweeting the most. Of course, it's in my event, I'm leading that, I'm asking the questions, I'm at the top there. You're the most retweeted. So it's interesting to go look at this. Who are the top mentions, the top hashtags that were used there, the various leaderboards that we've built out and where they are geographically. Being able to also go in and look at, so this, for example, they've been tracking this for about 4 or 5 years for me, but we've rebuilt the dashboard a couple different times. So that's why you only see the last 5 events here. But you can actually go in and look at trending across these multiple events. And so look at the data. If I hold down Control and select multiple events, let's do the last 5 events, for example. Having selected those, let's go back to the top. So 5 events, 5 one-hour events. This shows us that we've reached 747,000 accounts and had over 14 million impressions. So looking at some of the questions here, Sydney's asking, so how come this information is not used to track the Russians breaking into our elections? You know, well, it depends on where the data is and what's collecting. If they've falsified their profiles, it might show that, wow, we have thousands of people joining us from the middle of Ohio. That's weird. You know, so there's ways that you go in and spoof that. Obviously, part of the cleanup with any of this is how clean is the data that you're importing in, but that's a slightly different discussion here. But anyway, this is just to show you the power of what you can do with Power BI. So I can go in and pivot on any of the hashtags that were used, any of the people that were participating. I can go in there, for example, pick on Alistair. So I can look specifically who Alistair's interacting with, the number of tweets that he did over that time. I can go in and look at the top hashtags that he used. And so here, just where it's relevant, is he just mentioning himself? I don't know, 21 times? That sounds like Alistair, but you know, maybe that's it. 21 mentions of Alistair during that time. So the way that you go in and slice and dice this data, I mean, it's incredibly powerful. And so it's not just hey, this is in Excel, I'm limited by my knowledge of the functions there. There's so much more that you can go and do. Here's the network view of that same data. The word cloud, what was mentioned the most. Again, I ran it. This is like a narcissist thing that, my event, that's why it's showing up like that. But I love this also, like impressions by session over time, the overall reach, the sentiment by the questions in a single event. There's just really great ways to go and slice and dice this data depending on your needs. And that is, that is the power of Power BI. It is that democratization of data. So jumping back over and SharePoint lists, it's not it's not new, but this kind of goes back to what I described at the beginning. I'm not going to do anything else in SharePoint. Share this one view, but in the modern SharePoint lists, again, Microsoft understood that where they're going is that this data needs to be unlocked. It can't be, everything in SharePoint, of course, is permissions based. You only see that data which you have the permissions, the rights to go in there and see. But they've also made it much more flexible to say that this is a data source that we need to be able to interact with, draw from, leverage, publish back to. So a two-way interaction with this data that you want to be able to go and automate in other ways. It shouldn't be, hey, I need to export data from SharePoint into this format, go in and change things up, dump it into a database that I can then access to make useful for the solution that I'm building. I need to dynamically be able to go in and access this data and build that into my solution. And so Microsoft is, it's why you have, and think about this too, is the unified back end of Office 365 for content is all becoming SharePoint. I don't know the time frame for it, but this is happening with the rollout they're building out for Yammer. That's been a holdout for a while because of the architecture of the product is the differences, but that everything is going into Azure so that, whether you're using OneDrive or Outlook or Yammer or Microsoft Teams or SharePoint, whatever that is, that when you save content, when you save files, images, whatever it is, those assets are stored on the back end. It's all SharePoint. It's all in lists. It's all accessible. It's accessible through that graph, the Microsoft Graph and the Graph API. And then similarly, all the conversations are on the Exchange side of things, so that you have SharePoint and Exchange, which are the foundational technologies behind all of these other tools of where data is being stored, and you have access to that data to be able to build those things out. So some examples that are in the white paper, just to highlight some examples of using these business apps. One great, there's I think 5 or 6 case studies in the white paper. I'm just going to highlight 3 of them. So the American Red Cross, so they leveraged PowerApps, Power BI, and Microsoft Flow to build this supply hub. So they had these old order forms, paper-based or Excel-based, painful. It didn't do anything. Somebody had to go in and take the information and then go do something with it. And instead what they did is they went in and built this automated system, this supply hub. So as people made their selections based on what was ordered, go and do the acknowledgement. So it would actually kick off the order. It would route the approval based on the amount of the items that people are ordering to make sure that it's authorized. So it automatically can be tracked by accounting, authorized by the manager, acknowledged within shipping, within the supply chain side of that, acknowledgement back to the individual who made that request. So it has all of that in a way that's visible. So me as a manager, I can go in there and look at the running report of the orders that people are putting in for office supplies, for medical supplies, for whatever that thing is through this process. And that's something that, again, I don't have to go to IT to build this. I can go and build this, tweak it as the process owner of this activity. Another great case study, Reliable Electric. So PowerApps, Flow, and SQL, they wanted to create a work order estimation app. So again, Excel, common theme here, Excel-based process where it was discussions, meetings, and human beings looking at and having to make decisions around this data. So instead, they built this intelligent application that as people went in and they put in a request for this based on the availability of people, of resources, of all this, they could do a better estimation of what it would actually take to deliver this solution for this request. And so there's not takes a lot of the manual out of that process, as long as, again, it goes back to the core, to the key to success for any of these solutions is clean data. I can't estimate or underemphasize that overemphasize. Thank you. But I can't overemphasize the importance of that clean data. And so by putting it at this the point of sale, that the people that are entering this information and having a conversation to get the work order information in there, and that the other teams that are impacted that have to provide their estimates, the system dynamically understands that, hey, I'm a project manager, I've got a 50-hour week, however, I'm 85% utilized. My schedule shows that. So somebody coming in and says, hey, we'll just apply this person looks like he has some availability, let's do that. When the reality is, based on the schedule, that's going to impact the ability to deliver in the real world of what it takes for this. So, the system can do a lot of that estimation between different tools, between different processes. The third example I'm going to share here, Hawkary Pharmaceuticals, again, PowerApps, Flow, the Common Data Service, and Power BI. So they went, it's more on the developer side. They're getting more technical, that deeper connection there. They created a doctor relationship management platform. So again, they started with an Excel and email-based solution and very manual, and created this automatic, cloud-based solution so that doctors, nurses, technicians can walk around, can actually fill out this information in real, and see the scheduling, be able to understand, okay, I see that these prescriptions, that one was filled, with the information that we got from the pharmacist, you never picked it up. That may contribute to why you're having these continued issues. I met with you 6 weeks ago. We talked about these things. We did a scan. Let's go tab over. Let's look at your slides, the files, your scans right there. So to have all that history of multiple systems feeding into this one interface, again, that is something that more complex. These other systems, very secure with your personal medical information, but can be accessed and usable and built out using these same tools. So you can do very quick and simple on the fly end user, power user capabilities, or you can go very deep, rich technical experiences with the same set of tools. So some of the examples, and why I would again push you to the white paper if you've not downloaded a copy. So in writing the white paper, the team actually put together and built 3 working solutions, and those templates are available. So I've actually got the links to each of those templates. So the 3 samples, probably one of the most popular things when you are learning about the technology is every organization has a travel request and approval process. So here's something that there's a template out there. You can go see how it was built, go and modify it, use it inside your organization, see how it works. But that's something you go and build very quickly. The second one, event creation and management. So if you're doing multiple user groups, or you're doing, Eric and I live in the SharePoint Saturday world and kind of all these community events and things that are out there. But as an organization, you might also be participating in user groups. You might be putting on webinars and other informational things, working with the local community. And so be able to track those things, be able to have an approval process and know where they are, and that it all feeds into a shared company calendar. That's something that you can do and manage this, as well as see the events that people request or suggested that were rejected and why, and hey, maybe we'll do this later. But to see the flow and where those requests, why is it always Steve that always is trying to go and participate in or create these events? What's going on with Steve? Hey, maybe he might be a great event person. He just is tuned in to the community side of things. The third example is that employee onboarding. So this is, if you don't have like a new employee orientation, or if you do, but you want to get more automated and I guess, methodical about new employees coming on. Have you been through our, the HR training, the various, safety training, sexual harassment training, diversity and inclusion things, as well as educational on history of the company to go through. You might have created quizzes in Microsoft Forms to test their knowledge. So they actually watch a video, they can't pause it, and then go take the test. When the video completes, ask them a bunch of questions to verify that they actually watched it and paid attention to that, and build that into your onboarding process and get all the data back. How do they score on that? What was their awareness of this? If they've failed at a lot of these quizzes based on the onboarding, we're still under our 90-day review of this new hire. But anyway, but these are just some of the examples that you can go and start playing with and very quickly, get up to speed there. So back to the Microsoft slide here. It's all about this, again, gathering information, automating that, and then Chris liked that word, liberating then that data and how you share that out. I like that word as well, liberate that data, democratize that data. Again, one more time, definitely go take a look, download the white paper, go and start playing with some of those templates, those examples. That's going to be your best way to learn, is to go and get your hands dirty with those things. Hopefully this has been useful for those that are as a 101 session of what business apps are. Hopefully I've clarified some of the confusion on the messaging out there about those self-sustained one-off business apps for small businesses and what's happening in the developer messaging, just to make this more relatable from an end user, power user standpoint. But again, your best resource out there is that Transforming Business Processes with Microsoft 365 white paper. And I see that there are some questions here. If you have anything else to post over here, I'm going now turn my attention over and look at these and see if there's anything else to respond to.
Eric was kind of answering these in the background.
Okay.
But
anything left open to answer?
No, but I do want to ask a question just in case anybody else on the call didn't see it. This is a question from our friend Sydney. Sydney, thanks for sending in your question. How do I know and show to my customers that these little apps that run flows are not reporting back to someone outside my customer's firewall or another business unit? And how do I demonstrate that no one who is not authorized can change the flow so I and my customer lose the audit trail?
So if you understand how the flows and the rights, the permissions are managed across those things, and again, it's like anything, it's permission based, and so you do have that that visibility into that. So it's tracked. And so you can explain how it works, where it fits in, how it I don't have it up. There's actually there's an article that talks about this specifically, and it's out, I believe it's out on, I don't think it's a tech community, I think it's an article, I think it's out on Docs, but that's something I can, let me go find it. It's probably in my history, and I can respond back and share that out.
I was muted. Tried to have a conversation with you, and I was having it with myself. That's great. Let's see. Okay, thank you for that. Let me go back to these questions real quick. Sydney, you were also asking about what happened at Microsoft poll that people could use in real time to respond to what a speaker was saying. I'm pretty sure that was actually part of Skype and not GoToWebinar. I believe there is a feature to do that, but we don't typically use those in our webinars. But thank you for bringing that up. Okay.
I use Zoom, and it has it there, and that actually, that request has come up with the stream folks as well, and I don't know where that is, that feature. If you actually go in and look into some of those kind of requests against Microsoft Stream, which is powering a lot of the video capability within Teams and Yammer and elsewhere. And you can look at kind of the popular requests and go vote up, on user voice. That would be a great place to go in and look at that capability. But that's one I've heard mentioned. I just don't know where that is. I don't think I know it's not available yet. I just don't know where it is in the request process.
Got it. There you go. Yeah, it is a nice feature. But yeah, I agree with everything that Christian said. All right. Not a whole lot of other questions came in. Christian, you did such a great job. You left everybody speechless. Actually, while you were talking about Power Apps, I was thinking about something. We've had a couple clients who have been kind of asking about that and asking more about Power Apps. And someone mentioned something about filtering date ranges and having a problem with that. Have you experienced any problems with trying to filter date ranges in Power Apps?
I'm not an expert on all things there. I mean, there are people that I would point you to, Shane Young and Laura Rogers being two of those to be able to answer the specifics around some of the, the capabilities and the limitations of the platforms. Those would be the two people that I would go to first.
Sure. Gotcha. Okay, great. All right. Well, if there are, you know what? I have a good question for you. I was waiting to see what other questions came up, but I think this will be a good jumping off point for you. What is your favorite business application, and which application do you think is the most valuable right now?
My favorite business application, the tools to build the business applications, or my favorite business application?
Probably just your favorite one. Which one is your favorite to use, I guess?
I mean, I'm doing a ton with forms, and look, I've got Qualtrics licensing, and I do with some of my research projects with the teams that I work with, and we are Qualtrics because it's much more advanced and does other things. However, for the on-the-fly, the things, the forms is something that I'm using more and more. In fact, I just created 2 this week that I'm leveraging. There are some limitations to that, and so I'm interested in the preview of the pro version and some of its capabilities. such as the end of that, you fill out a form. It says, like, would you like to add an additional response? Like, well, I want everyone to be able to respond one time. And so you have a bit more control over people within your organization. There's less capability when you are making this available out to the world and just say, here's the URL, go in and vote on this form. But the branching and some of the advanced features that are coming to, I don't know when the GA is going to be announced, but again, you can go and see those features today as part of the preview. I'm very excited about that, and I'd sure like to not have to pay for Qualtrics if I don't have to.
Gotcha. There you go. Thanks for sharing that. All right, guys. I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. Christian, thank you so much. This has been such an amazing session. I've actually been really looking forward to this one. This has been stuff I've been really wanting to get to know a little bit more about. So I appreciate you diving into this and telling us a little bit more about all this stuff. So thank you so much. If you guys couldn't get enough of Christian, we're actually going to have him back next month as part of a group, though. Next month, our webinar will be our annual review of the SharePoint Conference North America. That's happening next month in Las Vegas. A lot of big stuff comes out of that conference, and we're going to do our usual roundtable review. We'll have some familiar faces. I should be here, barring the birth of my first child. If that happens, on or around that, I may not be here, but Eric will be leading the way if not. Eric will be here, we'll have Christian, and we'll have some other surprises in terms of the speakers, so stay tuned for that. You can find Christian, you can see all his information here, cbuck at Collab Talk or at Buckley Planet on Twitter. You can find the Pixelmill team at Pixelmill team on Twitter or pixelmill.com. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining today. Thank you for spending your Thursday with us. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you guys down the road.
Thanks a lot.